All right, and welcome to Hat Trick Sports Talk. I'm Robert. As always, I am joined by Shane and Brandon. How are you guys doing today?
Doing well. How you doing?
Good. How about you, Brandon?
Hanging in there.
Yeah, going through the motions of a pretty long week. But we're here. It's Friday. Let's get started. We'll talk first about the Jets and the Broncos. Better game than we expected last night. But Brandon, I'll start with you and talk about Brett Rippon's performance, the third string quarterback for the Broncos, who was forced in with all those with the Drew Lock injury. What were your thoughts on his debut?
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised. I had actually never heard of this guy before. I mean, I knew the last name considering I think it's his uncle, Mark Ripien, Super Bowl MVP, like very good quarterback.
Two-time Super Bowl champion,
Two-time
yes.
Super Bowl champ, one-time MVP. The Broncos have had, as we all know, a hard time at quarterback since Peyton Manning retired.
9 starting quarterbacks since Peyton
Yeah.
Manning.
And it looked like they had something good going with Drew Lock, but then he got hurt. And now they got this dude, Ripien, who, not to be too punny, but he went out there and he Ripioned it up. That was bad. But yeah, I think it was like he was 2 for 3, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 250 yards passing, I believe, something like that. And I think the most important aspect of his game, as I touched on Monday night when we were talking about clutch quarterbacks who have clutch ability, I believe that Ripien showed that he had the ability to stay calm during a close game and also being able to lead them on a final drive. I believe there was a statistic that was put up on the screen during the Thursday night game that said he's one of only two quarterbacks to lead a game-winning drive in their first career start in the NFL. I think the Broncos actually, in my opinion, are a team that people should look out for in the future because I think they have good pieces to build on. Jerry Jeudy looks like an absolute stud. What was his name? I forget his last name, but that guy who was another undrafted wide receiver who had a heck of a game.
There was another guy who was our fantasy star MVP, and Tim Patrick as well.
Yes, Tim Patrick. That's what I'm
with
thinking of.
23.3. I think he was drafted in the 6th round a few years ago, actually. But then on top of that, keep in mind that KJ Hamler as well, another rookie that they drafted, had a hamstring issue, but he had a really good camp this year as well.
But yeah, Tim Patrick, to me, I think he actually reminded me a lot of Doug Baldwin in the way he was able to like kind of be a safety blanket for Ripien. He had one really, really nice catch that stood out to me where he caught it on the sidelines and had like a toe tapping, dragging catch to basically pretty much set them up for the game-winning touchdown. And yeah, Jets, on the other hand, I have nothing good to say about them as usual. Man, where do I start? I'll just say a couple things and then turn it over to Shane because I'm sure he could do equal damage ripping them apart as I could. But I'm very sad because they did my man I can't remember his name right now. The O lineman.
Mekhi Becton, who you really loved coming out of the draft.
They did my man Beck dirty by putting him back in after he shouldered last week. Now they put him in as an emergency guy, and he also not ready to play. You can see he was holding his favoring his arm going in, and then he got hurt like right away basically and was pulled. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch next week because apparently they're supposed to get most of their players back who are on IR. Like they're getting a lot of their, I believe they're getting a lot of their wide receiver threats back, and they're getting
Le'Veon Bell's
Bell back. Now that'll be the question. I'm sure we'll talk about that probably next week, leading into the game, because I don't know how much they'll use Le'Veon Bell, because in the first he only played like 2 games before he got hurt, and in those 2 games, frankly, he did absolutely nothing. So
he's looked leaner. He's looked better in terms of shape. In terms of training camp news with Le'Veon Bell, the reports weren't very good. They didn't really use him a lot. Gase, for some reason, just doesn't know how to use him. But Shane, I'll go to you with reaction to this Thursday night football game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't watch the game as it was happening because I had better things to do with my life than watch 2, Division III football teams
Okay,
play
it's
each other.
bottom 30 teams in the NFL. That's all you got to say. You don't have to say these are D2 programs. So we're not there. Okay, continue.
It's a joke. No, but anyways, I was I really was not I was surprised to hear that Joe Flacco, the greatest quarterback of all time, was in the game, and for an injured Sam Darnold. Yeah, I mean, overall, I think the Jets, not only do they have bad players on that team, I think just it's becoming even more and more clear than before that the organization and the coaching staff is just a mess there. It just seems like nothing is going right for this team. And I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think they're ranked 32nd in the power rankings pretty much unanimously. Which, I mean, they should be, let's be honest. Yeah, I give Adam Gase a few more weeks at best.
That's not happening. The Athletic reported that he'll be there the rest of the year, regardless of record. Yes. Last night, the Athletic reported he'll be there for the rest of the year, regardless of record. So your thoughts on that, Shane?
Well, I mean, it seems like everything was pointing towards them firing him. But I mean, if they, I don't know, maybe they're thinking, it's already bad enough. Let's not, throw another curveball at the team, midway through the year. There's already enough craziness going on. Maybe that's what they're thinking. I don't know. Or maybe they're looking at it and they're thinking, well, who's out there to even hire at this point for NFL coaches? There are some college coaches like Lincoln Riley or, guys like Urban Meyer who could come up, but no like established NFL guys, at least that I can think of, who are just, waiting to be hired. So that's probably part of it too.
Yeah. Just a quick update on, of course, Brandon mentioned how the Jets will have most of their players back off injured reserve. Sam Darnold yesterday, of course, went out with the shoulder sprain, of course, as Shane mentioned, with Joe Flacco coming in. Adam Gase said anything is on the table with Darnold. It seems to be a minor shoulder sprain considering he did come back in, but with 10 days rest, we'll see what happens with him. I did want to talk about a potential interim head coaching candidate and the craziness with his defense. So apparently, if Adam Gase does get fired, I think the leading interim candidate would be Greg Williams. And his defense yesterday was basically just headhunting, especially towards the end of that game. Vic Fangio told his players to run off the field after those really unnecessary hits on Brett Ripien towards the end of the game that were absolutely brutal. So Vic Fangio told his players to just leave the field, to not have any confrontation, because Vic Fangio was certainly heated after that. Brendan, your thoughts on those hits at the end of the game and pretty much the Jets' ridiculously aggressive defense, which caused them pretty much a lot of penalties and maybe even the game towards the end?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it feels like the Jets were getting very upset with the way that how poorly they were playing. And a lot of that looked like aggression. I feel like we're gonna assume that it's Greg Williams telling them to go out there and headhunt because of his past. I don't think it's fair to put that on him unless we find out like actual evidence that he was saying, "Hey, go out there and take him out." But those players were not the defense for the Jets. They were not playing with any on those last couple plays. We're not playing with any like level of regard for safety for Ripien. Like there was one play, I believe it was the play that led to kind of some of the jawing between the Broncos and the Jets, where the corner, I believe it was one of the D-line, I think, came free on a blitz, and Ripien got the ball off right before he was hit, and he threw it, and then there was a good maybe 2 or 3 seconds after he threw it, and then he got just like shoulder charged, basically, not even trying to wrap him up. He just kind of went while still going full force, knocking him down. And to me, that was just that's a blatant dirty play. I do see, so like on the post-game show, Joe Thomas was talking about like, oh, if you don't want your quarterback getting hit as an offensive lineman, do better. Like you need to do a better job of stopping the defense. No, that's like I get where he's coming from as like arguably the best center to play the game in the last like 20 years. But it just shouldn't be even a thought. Like when you play it goes back to what everybody was talking about last week with Chris Carson getting gator rolled, and everybody coming out to his defense and being like, look, like you don't do that shit in football. Like I believe I forget his name. He played for the Cowboys, but now he's a commentator for ESPN on the Monday Night Countdown pre-show for the Monday Night Football. I think it's like Marcus Lawrence or something. But basically he was saying like when you're on the field, you're trying to tackle, you're trying to stop them. You're not trying to hurt them. It is a brotherhood of football. You have a written rules where you're on the field. You are never ever trying to actively hurt someone. That should not be your goal. Like after the game, you shake hands, you pray together, you basically be like, good game, and you hope everybody walks off the field like fine. Sometimes I feel like in this sport there are players who kind of forget about that aspect of it, and I think at the end of the game, that was kind of what it was looking like. It was sloppy, it was ridiculous, and Greg Williams needs to know better because he is the coach of the defense. At the end of the day, that is his job. His job is to make sure his players are mentally okay. Because if you are not mentally okay to step on that field, you should not be allowed to step on the field, especially as the game is winding down, where you might be more of the mindset to just go out there and hit someone. And I say that because when I played football, I was a defensive lineman, and my designation, I played nose guard. I also was put on the outside to blitz freely when there's like no one out there. So I know what it's like to just have a clear shot at the quarterback and be like wanting to hit them. But at the end of the day, you can't do that.
And so a couple of things as well. we didn't talk about the Chris Carson Gator roll thing. Originally, when I saw it, I didn't think much of it, and I saw a replay, and it was really bad. It was unnecessary and stupid. And then what also frustrated me with the Jets as well, and I'll go to Shane to sort of finish off this discussion, but what frustrated me was it was like a minute left in the game. They're up by 11. The game's clearly over. Why are you trying to even do anything? The fact that they called a pass play, I don't really like. But again, it's the culture of the game. It's a passing league anyway. Just let your corners do the thing and don't worry about hitting him, or at least just wrap him up and don't hit him like the Jets did. I don't understand when you're literally down by 11. Why would you? I don't know. Why would you be that aggressive? It's just mind-boggling to me. Shane, so sort of conclude that discussion. What are your thoughts on Brandon's comments here?
Yeah, I'm with Brennan. Especially as a football player, especially when you are, when you're on a losing streak and you're frustrated and whatever else, and you get aggressive, especially towards the end. You get worn down, and it's understandable why somebody would want to go there mentally, all things considered, but you can't. I mean, there's no place for it, and I mean, it's just the situation, especially the situation, the game was over, like Brandon said, and it's just very uncalled for. But that stuff will happen. It's been happening. Seems like a lot this year, for whatever reason. But it is what it is, I guess. And we gotta just deal with it as it happens and hope that people don't keep on doing that, because you continue that and it just leads to injuries and whatever, which you don't want. I mean, that's bad, really bad.
And
and that already has happened to a lot of people. So,
and I would just say, just to follow up real quick. I personally believe you were saying we don't know why we're seeing more of these injuries, not injuries, but more of these aggressive plays and dumb plays. Again, one aspect that I'm starting to realize is more and more, and I hope the coaches are realizing this, is it's important to have those preseason games, maybe two games at most, just to kind of get the ability to teach players. We also didn't have training camp, we didn't have mini camp, we didn't have OTAs.
Or a full.
Well, we had training. We didn't have a full training camp. We didn't have OTAs. We didn't have mini camp. We didn't have
rookie mini camp.
We didn't have rookie mini camp. And I think what we're seeing here is, as media and as people who have at times we've asked the question, is it important to have these mini camps, rookie mini camps, OTAs, preseason games? With the combination of dumb penalties and injuries we're seeing, I believe the result is, yes, you do need to have at least 2 preseason games, because not only does it get the body, or hell, if you don't want to do preseason games, do scrimmages between teams at their sites,
which they've already done for a long time, except it causes fights.
But do full on pad, because I'm telling you, these injuries would go away if you had the players actually getting their bodies warmed up before they went full speed hitting each other.
So much of this is tackling technique, right? And of course, more coaches, especially Pete Carroll's been an interesting example with him, of course, locally, talking about tackling techniques and all these things. I think the preseason stuff is pretty warranted now in terms of, and they were talking about on the broadcast last night about all these hamstring injuries as well, these hamstring pulls, things of that nature. And one of the other interesting aspects is every preseason we have a player or two, guys trying to make the roster or something like that, make some of these boneheaded hits and boneheaded plays, and it's used as an example across the league to say, hey, don't do this. Sometimes, unfortunately, we get those examples from players, especially players who are trying to make the roster every year, and these are things that are used. These are tapes that are used by coaches, not only of that team, but across the league about how to do these proper techniques and all of these things as well. So, yeah, definitely an interesting conversation there for sure. Moving on to, honestly, a really, tough thing this week with the Titans having about, 15 players and staff combined test positive for the coronavirus. The Titans and Steelers game, originally scheduled for this Sunday, has been rescheduled to week 7.
Robert, you cut out.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so random. My speaker just cut out. My sincere apologies for that.
No worries. Oh, now we can.
Okay. That is hilarious. Okay, so a couple of things with the Titans and the Steelers, of course, with the Titans testing positive for the coronavirus. The Titans, of course, with 15 players and coaches testing positive. The Steelers game that was originally scheduled for Sunday, the Titans and Steelers game, has been moved to week 7. And then the Ravens Steelers game is moved to week 8. The Ravens now have their bye week switched to week 7. Shane, your thoughts on how the NFL, the Titans, and the rest of the teams have handled everything going on this week with the pandemic?
Pretty impressive, really, all things considered. I mean, the fact that they were able to adapt the schedule that quickly, and I mean that's a lot of having to figure out which games to move, which bye weeks to whatever, this and that. I mean that's it's hard to figure that stuff out. But they did, and I mean it seems like it'll work out okay. So I mean, hey, good on them. I think it would have been a bit dangerous to have play this week, whether it was Sunday or Monday, because you probably need like a 2-week period just to have everyone disperse and get healthy again. So and that's that seems to be what they're doing. So yeah, no, I think, I mean, at least from what I know, it seems like they're handling it pretty well, all things considered. So yeah.
Brandon, do you feel the same way with that?
Yeah, I think the league is handling it pretty well, but I get the feeling that there are some teams in the league that are just not taking it as seriously, like the NFL is taking it very seriously, but like some of these teams, I just feel like aren't taking it seriously,
Yep.
Sorry, just troubleshooting there. So do you feel like the Titans were one of those teams for you?
Well, I mean, if you have 15 personnel overall getting sick, like it kind of, I would just say yes.
And then on top of that as well, you see all the fines around the league with the coaches and players, and of course the Raiders being investigated as well. It's something that sometimes I think more from the league perspective, right? The NFL teams themselves have done or the NFL as a league have done a good job in terms of protocols, but the teams themselves at times have been laxed, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
And in terms of the schedule changes, what is this sort of impact for the players? I mean, not expecting a bye week, now you have one. What do you think that's like for the players and coaches across the league? Shane, I'll go to you with that one.
I mean, you just have to, you got to adapt, it's not, I mean, it's, you have your schedule at the beginning of the year and you get really set on it, and, you plan for your bye week and this and that, whatever. This week, that obvious, or this time for, a team like the Ravens or whoever, that obviously isn't the case. But I still think that they'll take advantage of it regardless. And I don't know what was their original bye, the Ravens?
It was supposed to be week 8, so they got pushed back to week 7.
Oh, so it's not. Yeah,
I believe.
So it's not that big of a deal. It's
Mhm.
only 1 week difference. Yeah. But then, well, the Titans and Steelers get their bye week this week then, right?
Mm-mm. They might have another bye later in the year still as well.
No, the NFL is basically calling this their bye week.
Bye week.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's interesting just because it's so early,
A bye week is normally starting next week, week 4. Or I guess technically
This is week 4.
This is week 4. So normally it does start bye weeks this week normally
Mhm.
most years. So it's not necessarily that crazy, but it's still strange in that sense.
Yeah.
Brandon, in terms of the Steelers and the Titans going on a bye week, this early in the season, this unexpected, what do you think players and coaches are thinking in their locker rooms? Obviously with the Titans with the outbreak, but the Steelers as well.
Well, the Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin has claimed that it's not a big deal. But it kind of is a big deal because week 4 is, first of all, unprecedented for a team to have their bye week, because if you think about it, then they have to go another 10 weeks or 11 weeks, right?
Yeah, something
Yeah.
around there. That's why it needs to be previously
12.
scheduled. That's why it should be previously scheduled.
They have to go another 12 weeks without a bye. That means that by the time they are going to have to be one of the luckiest teams in the world to make it to if they make it into the postseason, which the Steelers are projected to make it into the postseason.
Mm-hmm.
They will have to be a very lucky team to be healthy making it into the postseason.
Yeah, especially with all the injuries.
Because if you remember, I believe the Seahawks they had one season where they were like, I think week 5 of a bye, they had a bye or something, which was the first week. I think it's the first week you can have a bye, and
I think it is week 5, not week 4. My apologies.
That was rough for us because they had to just fight, and we have our bye week 6 this year, which is not great. But it's better than week 4.
Although this year it might not be the worst thing since they have so many injuries right now.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Also, it's one of those things where like our schedule is not incredibly that tough. But going back to the Titans and the Steelers, I think the Steelers, one problem for the Steelers, I think, is they've been on a winning streak. So now they're kind of being like having to stop
the momentum.
And then stop the momentum and then go again, you know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, bye weeks do normally start in week 5. Yeah, it has been strange. So speaking of the fantasy impact for this, Brandon, you and I are playing each other this week, and we have Steelers and Titans players pretty much around our roster. You have James Conner, who I traded to you. I had the Steelers defense this week. I had Jonnu Smith as well. But what is that impact in terms of for fantasy players? What are some things that, like for you at least, I know for both of us, but for you specifically, that you've had to adjust with this sort of schedule as a fantasy player?
Well, it's harder this year because, especially playing in a league with more players, it's harder to just be able to go and pick up a running back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I made the trade for
you have Connor, right? So
Connor. Yeah, so I made the trade for Connor, thinking that I'd have him for I'd be fine for like 7 weeks until the bye or whatever.
mm-hmm.
But now I'm stuck trying to figure out who I start at running back, and it's kind of hard when there's not a ton of people to choose from. Also, I thought I had found a good like wide receiver option in Corey Davis, but that's not happening. So it's kind of one of those things where you just have to think about who to slot in that can get you some points. It's tough, because it's like, yeah.
I mean, I think we're pretty lucky that we are playing each other this week. This is the first time the co-hosts are playing against each other, so I think we got lucky in that sense, that we're both kind of dealing with it more than other teams in the league. But for me, I mean, having the Steelers defense has been a luxury all year because you just don't have to switch defenses, and you're hoping that you only have to do it 1 week, right? And to pick up the Broncos D this week, I mean, they got 6 points. They did enough production for me. I'm not upset with it, but at the same time, it was still really difficult. And then if thankfully Kittle's back, but for me, if Kittle was out, it would have been really tough because I have a good wide receiving core now, and it would have been tough to lose that because Jonnu Smith was out. I would have had a tough decision to make there. And then, of course, also keep in mind that the Titans play the Bills next week, and we could see this going over to next week as well. In terms of fantasy, we had another very interesting trade happen in our league this week. So I'm going to pull that up right now. And the trade was, so our guy Paul and our guy Tanner made a deal. Tanner sent Paul Kenyon Drake and Kenny Golladay. Paul gave up Kareem Hunt, Todd Gurley, and Mike Evans. Your guys' thoughts on that deal?
Well, I don't. I think. Wow. I think Paul kind of got the short end of the stick here. I mean, wow. Giving up Kareem Hunt and Mike Evans for Kenyon Drake and Kenny Golladay. And, I mean, that alone, I think is a bit much. But giving up Gurley too, like in addition to all that, that's, yeah. Wow.
Brandon, your thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with on this one because that's rough. I don't think I would have done that deal.
See, I differ with you guys on this because I actually think Paul easily won this deal because there's something called buy low and sell high, right? And here were two players in Drake and Golladay that were buy low options. And I think that by Paul getting both of them, I think it was really impressive because Kareem Hunt, let's be honest, you're stressing if you want to play him every week. Todd Gurley's not productive, if at all. The only productive player I think Tanner got out of this deal is Mike Evans. I think, well, yes, of course, Drake has been really slow and Golladay coming back from injury, but more often than not, or I think for the rest of the year, Drake's going to play a lot better. And Golladay, again, coming off an injury. There's so many things in fantasy where if a guy's injured, you sort of panic and want to get another option in there right away, where sometimes being patient is better. I think Paul won this deal just because it's a buy low option for two guys I don't even know how you would use them. I would have a difficult time with Hunt or Gurley. I would have been eagerly trying to move them. And then I think the only guy he gave up a value is Mike Evans. So for me, I thought this was an amazing buy low trade.
So you're saying that it's basically this is good for Tanner in the short term, but good for Paul in the long run.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I mean, I mainly just want to see how Drake and Golladay end up doing as the season goes along.
Mm-hmm.
But then, because if they do end up being really productive, then yeah, I'd agree with you, but I don't know yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think again, that's why I feel like this is ultimately a buy low trade for
Right.
Paul, if nothing else.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. A lot of big trades happening, like 2 or 3 person trades
Yeah.
in our league. It's kind of fun.
I think it definitely makes it a lot of fun for sure.
Yeah.
And then let's go through the rest of the games of week 4 here.
By the way, do you guys like my t-shirt design?
Oh yeah, we
Very
have some
nice.
interesting t-shirt designs. That's a little teaser. We're still thinking about what we're gonna do with that. So that's a little teaser for later on as we go along here in October. But let's get through some of these week 4 games. Um, Shane, I'll start with you. What's a 10 o'clock game that you're looking forward to here?
Vikings. No, I'm kidding.
Mhm.
Um, 10 o'clock games. You know, I hmm. There's not really any particular one that really jumps out at me. Although Browns Cowboys might be interesting. Um, because to me they're both kind of in this zone where they should be a lot better than they are. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, but they're just held back by bad quarterback play, strange coaching, and lots of flashy players. Um, so they're very similar to me in a lot of ways, and I just want to see who kind of comes out on top in that one. I think it's the Cowboys. That would be my guess, but we'll just have to see.
Mhm. Brandon, any game that stands out for you here at the 10 o'clock hour?
Uh, I'm kind of interested in Colts Bears
Yeah,
Same.
because the Colts are like better than I thought they were gonna be, and the Bears I think have no business at 3-0, but they are. Um, so that's just something interesting to watch.
hmm This is the game I wanted to highlight at the 10 o'clock period. I think the main thing here with the Bears is they have an interesting schedule the next 2 weeks, and with Nick Foles being the full-time starter. You have the Colts this week, and then Thursday Night Football against the Bucks next week, which is the first of the Fox slate on Thursday night. I think this is going to be a very interesting game just to see how Foles plays with this offense. Does he fit it better than Trubisky? We got a peek of it last week, but let's see a full game or a couple games and let's see how this works. I think that's what makes this interesting. The Bears at 3-0, yes, I agree. I don't think they have any business being 3-0. That's why I think the Colts and the Bucks will be an interesting challenge the next couple of weeks.
well, they don't have any business being 3-0, but I mean, look at who they've played so far: the Falcons, Lions, and who was the second team? I forget.
Yeah. But
You know
either
what I
way, I
mean?
mean,
It's like,
yeah, but at the same time, Trubisky hasn't been phenomenal, and most of those games have been tight, really close, trying to come back late in the game. So,
well, yeah,
um,
no, I mean, I'd rather put in Paxton Lynch over Trubisky. I mean, honestly, like, God.
Yeah.
of
Um,
of the
yeah.
1 o'clock games, I think the main one here is the Patriots and the Chiefs. Cam Newton and Patrick Mahomes. Shane, your analysis on that game at 125.
Yeah, I'd agree. And the Bills Raiders too, I think is interesting. But yeah, Chiefs Patriots, the Chiefs have been um, they're 3-0 and they looked really good against the Ravens, but before that in the first 2 games, I mean, they really weren't that amazing. I mean they were good, don't get me wrong. They won, they got the job done, but I wasn't watching them thinking like, wow, these guys are incredible. Um, but I'm curious to see if they're if they really are cooking now, um, and if they're gonna do really well against the Patriots, um, or if we're gonna see the Patriots and realize, and if they come out playing really well, it's like that'll tell us a lot about, I think, about how good how productive their defense can still be, and also, how Cam is. I mean, um, facing a real defense. Not that the Chiefs' defense is that amazing, but they're certainly better than any of the defenses they've faced so far. So I think it'll just tell us a lot about both teams, especially the Patriots.
Brandon, how can Cam keep pace with this high-powering Chiefs offense?
I think it's going to be like I can't really call it a shootout. I think it's going to be the usual of short little dump passes and then Cam just running the ball. I think it's interesting because in a way I believe that the Chiefs and the Patriots seem like they have similarities in terms of both of their defenses not being amazing. But the Chiefs have the higher powered offense, and I feel like the Patriots are just an example of they play really good teams and they can't win. They play bad teams and they win.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like this is an example here?
I think they're gonna lose to the Chiefs.
I would agree.
Yeah, I don't think they'll win.
You think about it. They played the Seahawks. They lost, but at the last minute. They played the Raiders, who are okay, and they kind of torched the Raiders a little bit. And then who else did they play?
Miami week 1.
Miami, and they just. I mean, that wasn't really a blowout, but
they were in control though.
Right, but my point is they're in control the whole time when they play bad teams, and the one good team they played, they had to really, really, really fight.
Mm-hmm.
They were competitive.
Yeah, but they were competitive, but it wasn't like they weren't in control.
Right.
So
here's one thing to watch in this game. In watching the Patriots-Raiders game last week, one of the things that interests me was Cam Newton in the pocket. He wasn't running as much. I think that's a huge key in this game. I think they are starting the process of getting Cam to be more of a pocket passer, like I originally said at the beginning of the year. It really felt that way in that Patriots-Raiders game. That's something to keep an eye on in this one, to see how much Cam is actually going to run in this one. And then, Shane, I'll have you talk about Bills-Raiders since you mentioned that game being an interest to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Bills have – I think both of these teams have pretty good offenses. Especially the Bills. Allen and Diggs, that connection has been quite amazing. I mean, Allen just looks phenomenal. He's been very accurate, made good decisions. And then, as for the Raiders, they've shown that they can be productive offensively, but, defensively, they do struggle. That's no secret. They are 2-1, but I just look at this. I look at this team, and I don't think that their defense will be able to do much of anything against the Bills, especially their offense or their pass offense. I don't think that they will be very effective at all. And, it's interesting with the Bills because they're, we all thought that their defense would be like top 3 going into the season. And they haven't looked that great. I know injuries have been an issue. But I'm interested in how their defense will do against the Raiders offense because they have a really good running attack and they have some production from tight end. And so I really just want to see how they play on the front 7, which is what I will be looking for most in terms of defense for that game.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bills win it pretty easily, but I think there's a good chance it could be a very kind of like last week, like a close, high-scoring game. But we'll see.
Mm-hmm. And then with the Eagles and Niners, I have some injury reports here. It seems like no Jimmy Garoppolo, no Raheem Mostert, so we're going to get Nick Mullins and Jared McKinnon again. Kittle looks to be fine. He'll be ready to go. And potentially Deebo Samuel will be good to go, so maybe some weapons for Nick Mullins. I don't really know what to make of this Eagles-Niners game on Sunday night. Brandon, what do you make of this one? Did he freeze?
Did
Did you freeze, man? What happened? What's
I-
up with this?
You didn't say you were at. I didn't know if you were asking me or Shane.
No,
Yeah,
I was
he
asking.
said Brannan.
Oh.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
We're having technical difficulties
I
today.
don't feel like.
Or something.
I mean, the freezing is kind of appropriate for my thought on this 49ers-Eagles game because I have no interest at all.
You really just
I
don't know
feel
what
like
to make of it.
I feel like the 49ers are going to have an easy time with the Eagles. Like,
Yeah.
Even
the
with the
Eagles-
injuries?
yeah, the Eagles are just bad, man. I mean, think about it. Like, the Giants played the 49ers like second and a half strings last week. And the 49ers had an easy time with them. Like, and now they're getting Kittle back, right?
Yes, they are getting Kittle back,
So-
and maybe Debo as well.
Yeah.
Well, and you look at Nick Mullins. I think he's struggled in the past, but I think he's a lot better than people give him credit for. Because you look at this guy in the last game, he had 350 yards passing, which is, I mean, that's pretty good, really, and especially going against an Eagles secondary, which is not been impressive thus far. I think there's a good chance he could just light them up. And the Eagles, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah.
I was not expecting them to look this bad, but I don't know. I honestly don't know what the issue is there, because they have the right personnel. They still have Doug Peterson, who I think is a great coach. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know why they're struggling so much. I don't know if you have any wisdom on that, but
Well, I mean, I think the receivers are a big issue, and we don't know about Carson Wentz. I mean, he just looked – I mean, his first quarter of the game last week, he looked like – I had the word, but I lost it. He just looked kind of timid. Like, he just didn't look comfortable in the pocket at all in the first quarter, and that scared me. So it's going to be interesting to see him on national TV and how he looks, because if he looks bad this week, we have to have an honest conversation about what the quarterback position will look in the future for the Eagles. But I think this game will determine a lot on that front. We'll get to the Monday night game on Sunday as we do our weekly post show with the Falcons and the Packers. We'll get to that preview on Sunday. Let's get to some NBA stuff. Brandon, I'll go to you. Of course, a big win by the Lakers. Pretty dominant performance. We don't know if we most likely won't see Bam or Goran Dragic for the Heat. Is this series effectively over after one game, or do you think that's an overreaction?
No, I think it's pretty fair to say that it's over. If they don't have Dragic and they don't have Bam, there's not much they can do. Jimmy Butler's looking like he's hurt slightly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like last year where you had in the Raptors Warriors series. It was competitive, and then the Warriors lost all their pieces, and then it's like, well, what are you gonna do? It's unfortunate, but I just feel like the only reason I picked the Heat even having a chance is because of their three big players like Bam, Butler. I mean,
Yeah.
Tyler
Duncan
Hero,
Robinson's
and
been
like
good.
well, he didn't even play that well in Game 1.
Yeah, Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero both didn't play incredible, which was kind of
They were
frustrating.
non-existent. Like you can't. They need to be scoring like at least 30 to be offsetting the absence, and they were. I think Tyler Hero shot on like 20 points or something.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, Shane, is this series over for you as well?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, just look at Game 1. It's, LA was in control pretty much the whole time, and I mean they did it with ease. Yeah, I mean, just you look at Miami and just how that team is imploding right now with all their injuries. I mean, they don't. When it comes to Miami, their top pieces are Butler, Bam, and Tyler Hero. So you are missing two of them, and the other one looks somewhat injured. I mean,
Yeah.
how are you going to beat LeBron and AD with that? And it's just yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's it's unfortunate for them, but it's the way the game goes, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes. And in 3 games, the Lakers will be NBA champions, and they'll all go home.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
I still see the Heat winning one of these games. I do. I mean, that's just kind of the what the NBA is. I mean, it's hard to find sweeps in the finals, even when a team is beat up. Um, Look at LeBron a few years ago, like his first finals with Cleveland when Kyrie was out and all of that. I see the Heat winning at least one game. I don't think it's necessarily effectively over. It's just hard for me to say that considering the history of the finals and how it works. But other than that, the Lakers have this series, and the main key for me is Anthony Davis. I mean, I think AD is like the one player that's truly an X factor for this team. We know what LeBron is, but AD is just difficult for a bunch of these teams to stop because I don't know how you deal with the size, and even with JaVale and Dwight Howard, who started Game 1. It's just really hard to deal with their size, which is really strange considering the three-point era that we are in. But it's truly the Lakers' size that sets them apart in this series and pretty much throughout the playoffs.
Well, the Cavs were swept in 2018.
Right, but that I'm talking about the first year of LeBron
No,
in
I know.
Cleveland of his
No, I'm
comeback.
just thinking.
Yeah, 2018, yes.
Yeah.
Which they probably should have won Game 1 if it wasn't for J.R. Smith, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
Because
I remember you made a bet with somebody that.
Yes.
Or what was it? I just remember you brought a broom to school and everyone was really
Yeah.
confused.
So this is a really great story. In high school, I made a bet. I think with my friend Justo, I believe, and so I made a bet with him that I thought the Cavs were actually going to win that series in 7 games. So I said if it was a sweep, I would have to bring a broom to school to represent the sweeping. And so I brought a broom, and everyone was really confused. But it was a really fun. I have a great picture on that story. So props to my guys Justo and the Manya as well for that. Good shout out for those guys. And moving on to Doc Rivers, 5-year deal with the Philadelphia 76ers. Shane, your reaction to Rivers to the Sixers, which Jackson predicted on Monday's show.
Yeah, that was quick for starters.
Yeah, they were really aggressive with the deal, actually, really quick,
Yeah.
Shane. They were really aggressive with the deal. They wanted to get it done as quickly as possible to not give Doc Rivers a chance to go somewhere else. So that was a big reason why, but go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, it's not it's not surprising that they wanted him so badly, because they obviously want some sense of order in that building, because I mean, the Sixers, they've got talent, but the organization is so dysfunctional. and it starts with a good coach. And I think he'll be a good option for them. I mean, it's we talked about him in LA and that he was definitely not the problem with the Clippers. And I think it's smart by Philly to take advantage of this situation. And it's like, you think from their perspective, it's like, well, we need a good coach. Let's jump right on this guy. And I think I think he'll help them a lot by, whether they get rid of Simmons or he tries to bring them closer together, whatever the case may be. I think it's good to just have some sense of order in that locker room, which I am thinking he would maybe bring.
And then with the Embiid-Simmons relationship and also Al Horford and Tobias Harris and all those guys, but specifically the Embiid-Simmons relationship, Brandon, how do you think Doc Rivers can help sort of mend fences a little bit with that and get this team on the right track?
I think that he has proven that he's who can get players to play together, and just like understanding that it's basketball and sometimes you don't have to like be best friends as long as you can play together on the court. That's all that matters. I personally think that he's the best pickup for a coach for the 76ers, and I think they should be really excited. Yeah.
Here we go with another Kyrie Irving story. Brandon, you wanted to talk about this. It is a really interesting story, but
I just wanted to cover it real quick.
It hits the same notes as we always do with Kyrie, but it's still really interesting. I think we can have a great conversation about this. So Kyrie joined the debut episode of Kevin Durant's new podcast. The co-host asked whether he or Kevin Durant will take the last shot for the Nets next season moving forward. Kyrie said it depends who's hot. I don't see anything other than that. And then Kyrie added, I feel like I was the best option on every team I played for down the stretch. This is the first time in my career where I can look down and be like that. He said a bad word there, but can make that shot too. So he's basically saying KD's the first person in his career that can actually make game-winning or clutch shots down the stretch, even though he had players like LeBron in his career. Brandon, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I'll be the first one to say that I'm not the biggest LeBron James lover in the world. I think sometimes people overestimate how in certain conversations about him. But look, that's just dumb. That's just a dumb statement. Factually, it's dumb because first of all, he's 1,000% calling LeBron James out, and that itself is dumb. Because
he's done that constantly.
Because LeBron James finds things to be pissed off about to motivate himself, so he doesn't need any help be given actual beef to get pissed off about.
Kind of like MJ, kind of like Michael Jordan.
Right. If players who were the greatest in their generations go out and actively find things to be angry about, find slights. So now that the Nets are going to be in his targets because of Kyrie, and it doesn't help that Durant has already, cost him championships. So, is stupid, in my opinion, for two reasons. One, because LeBron is better than him, just straight up. And two, because LeBron doesn't need any more beef you don't give LeBron James things to make him, to fuel his fire. You just don't. Hands down.
Kyrie said it wasn't a shot at LeBron. I'm not exactly sure.
BS. There's no way that's not a shot at LeBron.
Shane, go ahead.
I think Kyrie's just an idiot, to be honest with you. Every time this guy opens his mouth, I just cringe. I mean, first you have him wanting to start his own freaking league. Now now he's out here saying that he's better than LeBron James and all. I mean, which is like, dude, just be quiet and just play basketball. Like, we don't. Nobody cares, okay? Like, I don't know. And then the fact that he's, trying to cover it up, like, oh, that wasn't, that wasn't a shot at LeBron. It's like, shut up, dude. Okay, what do you think? We're 5? No. Okay, like.
So here's my point. An initial reaction, I think, we all kind of had that same reaction. As I think about this more, though, I kind of get where he's coming from in this perspective. In looking at that finals, the Cavs and Warriors series, right, where Kyrie hit that shot to win the game. And this is, I think he's leaning on moments here, because if you look at that shot in particular, LeBron was very clear, get the ball to Kyrie. He was even pointing to Kyrie, to Tyronn Lue, and saying, hey, get him the ball. He's not the primary option at all on any of these teams, but in certain situations, yes, Kyrie is the best option due to circumstance. That particular game was based off circumstance. Kyrie was playing really well. They were putting all this pressure on LeBron in the Warriors. There are certain circumstances when you have a duo or, a big three where the best player is not going to be the main guy down the stretch, but that depends on moments. The problem I have with this statement is he's taking those particular moments, important moments at that, but these particular moments and over-etching him to say, oh, I was the best player down the stretch for these teams. You were the best player in those moments based on situations, but not in terms of the complete game and the complete team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and for him also to be saying, like, every team he's been on, he looks down the court and he's never had anybody else that could get it done.
That's also another problem, yes.
I mean, like, I guess if you were going to the free throw line, you could say that's fair. Like, I wouldn't exactly want LeBron James at the free throw line if it was to win the game. But, like, if he's shooting a 3, I mean, I wouldn't be that upset. So I just think that people, and it also kind of is another one of my like pet peeves is when people make like such broad statements, because broad statements only ever end up with you looking stupid.
Mm-hmm.
About stuff like this.
Yeah. Like, if you have facts to back up a broad statement, go ahead. But if you're just going to say something and you're going to look dumb, just zip it.
Yeah. And, of course, that was that Game 7 with the Warriors being down 3-1, of course, of that big Warriors season, and Kyrie getting that shot to win that game in that Game 7 for the Cavs, getting Cleveland their first title in 50 years, just to sort of clarify that moment. But, yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is if he said, like, oh, in this moment or that moment, I think that would have been smarter than to, as you said, give a broader statement. As we're going on to the MLB postseason, we're in full swing. Brannan, your thoughts on the 16-team playoff format, because I think I'm really starting to love it. And is there any like specific game that you want to speak on, or any particular moment of this postseason so far?
It's interesting, but so far the teams that we thought would make it in, like, and like make it past the round of 16 have done that. But the thing that bothers me, the wild card, but the thing that bothers me about it is you have, and this is a good transition to the next MLB, in the next thing we're talking about, is you have a team in the Astros who are barely above 500, would not have made it into a playoffs in a regular season. You got players on the Astros, namely Carlos Correa, talking crap, saying, like, calling out haters, being like, oh, we're so good. You're really not.
Just
You're
because you win a wild card
you're
series.
a middling team. Just because you win a wild card series against a team in Minnesota Twins that has lost 18 straight playoff games.
You know what frustrates
18.
You know what frustrates me even more about this? The Astros didn't even look that good in this series.
Yeah.
Game one, the Twins choked. The Astros did nothing for 8 innings. They could not hit the ball for their life.
And it's like 18 straight. And then for Correa to come out and act all pompous and full of himself, which, by the way, makes me hate the Astros even more because it confirms to me that they didn't learn their lesson. They don't care. They think cheating is fun and great, and oh boy, like, it's amazing. Man, if there was any hope of the Astros organization being redeemed by fans for the coming years, they got another thing coming. Because I'm telling you, this is going to be the Yankees. They're probably like, woo, we're no longer the most hated baseball team.
In fact, they're really fun to watch. The Yankees are fun to watch now.
Honestly, I kind of love the Yankees this year because
they're fun to watch.
Had to struggle to make it in this year. They probably wouldn't have made it in if there wasn't a 2-team thing. And it's like a 2 like from each of it. But again, at the end of the day, for a team like the Astros to have to and specifically Carlos Correa saying where is it? There it is. He said, I know a lot of people are mad. I know a lot of people don't want to see us here, but what are they going to say now? Well, Carlos Correa, here's what this guy has to say. Y'all are frauds. Y'all cheated. Y'all sucked this year. Every single player in the starting 9, a batting average plummeted from last year to this year. Your pitching went down. Your team as a team went down. Y'all are barely 500. You won against an 18 straight loss MLB Minnesota team in the playoffs, and you think you're hot shit. Well, guess what? You're gonna have a rude awakening against the A's, who are an actually legitimate team.
And they're really good. That was a fun series with the White Sox.
I'm sick of the Astros. I want them gone. I want them out of my life for the next couple months. I don't want to have to hear their name. I don't want to have to think about them because the fact is they should have been punished more for their stupid can hitting. I thought they would not have made it in this year. Honestly, I hope that's my biggest problem with the 18 team thing is because I was like, sweet. The 16 team thing is because I was like, sweet. They're crappy. They're gonna have to suffer the same fate as everybody else in the AL West who doesn't make it in. So just to end my rant, if I haven't been clear yet, if anybody tries to tell me that there's any hope left for the Astros and their fan base and their fans and their team in terms of them not being pompous and self-centered and not feeling like they actually did anything wrong, don't even try to tell me that. Because I have 2 eyeballs and 2 ears, and I'm over it. They are the worst team, as Keith Olbermann used to say, the worst team in the world right now.
So they're the most hated team in the world in your mind right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rant over.
Shane, go ahead. Your reaction to that rant.
Oh no, I mean you pretty much covered it. It also enrages me that they weren't really punished at all or anything, and now they're in the playoffs. It's whatever.
Yeah. You might be interested in this as well. Continuing with the Astros discussion really quick. AJ Hinch and Alex Correa are both being considered for the Tigers management position. Shane, your reaction to that? Both Hinch and Correa or the Tigers.
Why? That way out. Really? They are?
Yes.
Huh. That's interesting.
It's like, okay, MLB, let's just let cheaters prosper. Sure, continue to let cheaters prosper. That's fun.
Yeah, this is the MLB has a lot of problems.
Yeah.
And this just adds on. It's just throwing a little gas on the fire,
It's infuriating.
In terms of Hinch and Correa, like they basically weren't even suspended because they were suspended for the season, but their suspension started when the season was supposed to start but got delayed due to the pandemic. So their suspension should have been moved to next season to some degree, but no, it's just for this whatever, technically, I guess this calendar year, if you want to put it that way, which is ridiculous. And the fact that the Tigers are even just bringing them in for an interview, while let's be honest, they're still currently suspended, it's really just bizarre and ridiculous.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about one specific technical thing with the postseason. With Trevor Bauer's big game in Game 1 against the Braves, of course, the Braves did beat him big time in Game 2 to move on. But Shane, I wanted to ask a pitcher's mentality question with this.
Okay.
When you're 0-0 in a ball game and you pitch as well as Bauer did, 7.5 innings, I forgot how many strikeouts he had, like 14 strikeouts on the day. You pitch so well, but your team they get on base, but they can't get runs. How is that mentality for you as a pitcher? I mean, you can only go so far with so many pitches. I mean, you can't pitch the entire game. You can't pitch extra innings or all that. You start the game, you pitch 7.5 innings, and your team just doesn't score a run, even though they've gotten on base. How frustrating is that as a pitcher, and how does that affect your mentality every time you go out there?
Yeah, I've actually been in that situation once that I can remember, where I started and I pitched 6 innings, and I didn't pitch a perfect game, but I pitched a no-hitter, and we just weren't getting anything going offensively. And yeah, it's frustrating, but you just have to, you can't think about it in a way. You have to just, because if you get distracted by it and you get heated up about it, you're going to sit there and think, God, why aren't we doing anything offensively? And, you're just going to get really frustrated with yourself, and it's going to take away from your game as a pitcher. And so that's why you got to just keep your nose down and just focus on what you're doing and hope something happens and just continue to do your game well. Because, ultimately you are doing well. So, you can't ask for much more than that, but you just got to hope that the other guys step up. And yeah, I mean, most important thing, at least for me, is just keeping cool, just focusing on my game, making sure I do my job, and then maybe that'll come later. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, it didn't for Trevor as the Braves went on a walk-off. Brandon, how would you handle it as a pitcher? How would you think to handle that situation?
See, this is why I would never be a pitcher, because I would just get really, really pissed off with the players on the getting on base. It's like if you're doing your job and everybody else isn't doing their job, it's like, fuck, man. It's like, come on. It's like I don't have the pitcher's mentality. I don't know. It just feels like that's one of the most frustrating parts about baseball. It's like you can put together a great pitching staff, but you also have to be able to balance like an offense that can get the runs across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's why my coach always liked me as a pitcher, not necessarily for my actual ability as a pitcher. I mean, I was pretty good, but it seems like my coach always liked me because I had the right mental aspect for it. Guys would hit a grand slam off me. I would just look at him and I'd shrug my shoulders and I'd be like, oh, well, on to the next one. It happens. You get some of these guys who something like that happens. They're like, and, just throwing a temper tantrum on the mound. And it's just like, well, oh, well, it happens.
Yeah.
One of the first times I pitched, actually, that happened. Someone hit a grand slam and I got kind of not mad, but I was like sort of upset about it. But then my dad, we get home and he turns on the TV and he's like, yeah, look at Felix Hernandez, who, I thought was just amazing. And then, those guys hitting home runs off of him. And I was like, oh, that even happens to the pros. And I thought, oh, well, okay, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Then, yeah, but, yeah, it is frustrating, when you're doing your job and you don't feel like you're getting a return on investment. But there's nothing you can do about it, unfortunately.
Yep. We are 6 weeks away from the Masters at Augusta National, and some interesting photos came out of the golf course, and it looks like an absolute mess. It does not look green at all.
Holy shit. Excuse my language, but like what?
The green is green.
Where is the green grass of Augusta? It does not exist, and we are 6 weeks away from the Masters.
Have they not been watering?
I would assume so.
Maybe they're just
You
gonna
know what
paint
it, you know what it must be? Because of Corona, they probably just shut the whole thing down.
Yeah, like for a few months or something, and then got
Oh
behind.
my god.
Yeah, because my dad is quite an agriculture junkie, and he he knows everything possible about keeping a lawn green and all this stuff. And he says that if you're not watering at least once a day, like grass like that, big like a golf course or a field or something, if you're not watering it for at least an hour every day from like the beginning of April, by like 4th of July, it's just going to be brown like that, and there's nothing you can do about it until the next summer.
It just looks like they literally just abandoned it.
And we're 6 weeks away from the Masters.
The trees look nice.
Yeah. The fake grass looks nice.
The water looks nice and fresh.
The tees look good.
Wow. What are they gonna do?
That's my question to you guys. What?
I'm just gonna spray paint the grass.
Just put in some fake grass.
I don't even know how you're gonna play golf.
You ever golfed on turf?
No.
No, I've never golfed ever, unfortunately.
It's the
That's
weirdest thing.
insane.
What is it like golfing on turf, Shane?
Well, I don't know. It's just like, normally when you hit a ball on the grass, it bounces a few times and it just kind of comes to a rolling stop. No, on turf, it just goes.
Just bounce, yeah.
And it doesn't stop.
Brandon, you're just like shocked by this.
I've never seen a golf course like utterly destroyed.
Yeah. I don't know if we're going to be handing out a green jacket because we don't have green grass. This is going to – I don't know how this is going to work, and we're 6 weeks away.
That was a nice pun.
And it's weird because usually it's shocking to me because like usually Augusta is like the most beautiful course.
Oh my God, it absolutely is. It's an amazing course. It is so beautiful. Absolutely.
You ever been at Gamble's Hands in Eastern Washington?
No.
No.
That's a nice course. Look it up.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But what was the course that? Remember they used the course here in Eastern Washington for the U.S. Open. What was it, by Tacoma or whatever?
Oh yeah, it was
Well, that's not Eastern Washington, but yeah.
Oh my bad, not Eastern Washington. Never mind. It was like
that one was totally destroyed before they
before they started.
Yeah, it was pretty yellow. What was that one called?
I think it was like the 2015 or 16 U.S. Open.
14, 15, 16?
Something around there.
It was in Tacoma.
Yeah, so not Eastern Washington, my
Chambers
apologies.
Bay.
Chambers Bay, yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have my complaints with the USGA about the U.S. Open, not as much the Masters, but yeah, this is not looking great. This is like the only perfectly green grass we have right now.
Yeah, because that's some fake ass grass.
Yeah. Absolute mess there at Augusta. We'll see how November looks like. Jeez. We're about a month away. Let's move on to the Stanley Cup final. Brandon, I wanted to ask you about your thoughts on the NHL bubble and the Lightning winning the Cup.
NHL bubble was kind of boring. It just didn't have the same pizzazz as as NHL final, as the Stanley Cup finals usually have. No fans banging on the glass, no one I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that it was interesting that it was Dallas versus the Lightning, but I kind of knew what was going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Even without Stamkos too. We mentioned Stamkos being key, and he only played one game in the series.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought he did a good job with the bubble.
The Lightning then proceeded to be extremely unhygienic during COVID and taking it around for people to be able to drink out of.
I mean, what do you expect with the Stanley Cup, though?
But it's COVID, my dude.
Yeah. Speaking of championships, the NBA Finals, their trophies being presented in a Louis Vuitton case this year.
That's hilarious.
Which is amazing.
Of course.
Moving on to our last topic of the day, of course, UFC 253. How about Israel Adesanya, man? He's looking great. Absolutely killing the division. Brandon, are we even sure what his next opponent's going to be in this division, or do you think we're looking at a super fight for the man?
I don't know. I feel like I don't really know who would challenge him.
Yeah, I have a hard time figuring it out.
John Cena. No, I'm kidding.
I mean,
maybe at this point.
Yeah, sure. I don't know. I'm sure John Cena would be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Now, probably if John Cena was going to go to the UFC, he'd probably just face Brock Lesnar or something.
That would be incredible. A couple of other pieces with this fight as well. Hamidou Diallo, the Canadian, he looks really good. Brandon Royval with a great submission. Really tight fight there. But I don't believe it was too tight. But Brandon Royval looks really good. Good kicking game in that fight. Jan Blachowicz winning the light heavyweight title. He wants John Jones. Are we going to get John Jones and Jan Blachowicz, Brandon, or no?
Maybe.
Are we gonna? Is John Jones?
I personally feel nah. I think John Jones is probably I think John Jones has made it clear that he wants to fight in the heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
Which is weird because John Jones to me is just not a guy I really think of as a heavyweight competitor.
Mm-hmm. How do you think he would perform at heavyweight against someone like Stipe, which seems to be the more realistic matchup at this point?
Terribly. I mean, he's so used to light heavyweight where it's more of a kind of a move around acrobatic sort of movement and then punch, whereas the heavyweight division is kind of just
punch,
stand your ground and just beat the crap out of your opponent.
One of the more interesting pieces, though, with Stipe and John Jones, I don't know how likely it is we get it, but one of the more interesting things, at least with that fight, would be that Stipe is more on the lighter side in the division. So it might have some of those pieces of light heavyweight. And then also there's one other thing in the fighting world that I forgot to put on the outline. It seems like we're going to get a boxing match between Conor McGregor and Manny Pacquiao next year in the Middle East.
Why is he why would he want why? Why would he want to do a boxing fight?
I mean, it would be a money thing.
Last time.
Yeah, he lost against Floyd. True. I mean, it would be a money thing, and it would also be very similar to the hype of Floyd and Conor. At this point, I think Conor's just looking for hype fights. Like, he's doing a charity match with Poirier. Yeah. Shane, what are your thoughts on Conor and him going back to boxing next year if that fight happens?
I mean, you remember how big of a deal, Floyd and Manny Pacquiao was back in 2012, and then how
the fight was horrible.
But then how much hype there was too around Floyd and McGregor. So you got to finish the circle. But I don't know. It'd be interesting. I mean, I think between the three of them in all their fights, Floyd Mayweather has sort of shown that he's the best of them. Mm-hmm. So then I think a fight between those two would be for a proper second best, if you will.
Yeah.
In a way. So.
And going back to Stipe, I think honestly with Stipe, just give us the fight that we've all wanted for a long time now. Give us Ngannou versus Stipe.
Number 2?
Yeah, just give us. I mean, he's the second in the world. Stipe's number 1. I mean, Francis Ngannou deserves it. I mean,
Now, here's the big question with that fight before we finish up. Do you think that Francis Ngannou's ground game is better and can handle Stipe? Because remember the first fight, Stipe killed him on the ground, and Francis Ngannou couldn't handle it all. Do you feel like his ground game will be better in the second fight on Ngannou's side?
Yeah. I think Ngannou's also going for the whole beat the crap out of his opponent mentality.
Yeah, which
if you notice, he's been training with a lot of world class boxers to get his punching. I just think back to the last guy I saw Ngannou fight and how it was just that, and it's different, but
I really worry about the wrestling. I think it's been better, but I think there's no doubt in my mind that Stipe is going to go back to that strategy. So it should be really interesting in that sense. All right, and that's it for today. Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Brandon, for a great show as always. Some technical difficulties. It happens as it sometimes does. But we'll be back on Sunday for the post show after another long and fun batch of NFL games, I should say. So we will see you all then. Have a great day, everybody.
And enjoy the weekend.
Yes, enjoy the weekend.